Alright, today we're going to be tying an Avalon Fly. It's my favorite permit fly. It mimics tons of different situations. You know, if you're not sure if they're chewing shrimp, they're chewing crab, it's a great little fly. It caught my last permit, which was my biggest, the other day. That's it right there. That's my version anyways. A few materials, a relatively easy tie, so we'll try to keep it short. We're going to start number 4, Tiemco 811S on the vise. This is my little travel vise. It goes with me everywhere. I like the Ultra Thread 210. I like a thicker thread. You can do it with 140 if you really want to, but I'm just going to give it a little thread base, just like you would almost any fly. Next we'll get our eyes. I just like a medium brass eye. Covers just about any situation. So we're gonna get that in here. Right up by the eye. You could leave a little room because we're gonna do a weed guard. So just a little bit of room there. Wrap it in any way you'd like. I just kind of do some figure 8s or X wraps, and then just get a few underneath it. Then we're going to go down to the bend of the hook here. Next we're going to tie in sort of an egg sac. You could use almost anything. A lot of guys use yarn. This is just orange EP. It's actually from a company called Silver Scales. They use this. It's called Crayfish fiber. It's the same as EP though. You could use either one. You could use yarn, anything orange. I've even done it with just dubbing, but it doesn't really stick out like that because that's what you're going for there. I like it short, but yeah, it's supposed to be an egg sac. I guess it could be kind of anything though. Next, what do we got here? Next, I will do the legs. So I'm just going to take one Silli leg. This has kind of got the hot tips. I dig it. It's kind of a tan or brown with orange hot tips. I'll just cut that right in half. You know, line up the hot tips, the orange there. Add that in one at a time. Trying to keep it relatively even. It just looks a little better if you keep them even and the orange lines up when you trim it. You can get that in there any way you'd like. Next, this part's kind of optional. I like it. I think it looks pretty cool. But just a pair of medium mono eyes, kind of like what you'd use for like a tarpon toad. So I'll invert the fly like so. Get those eyes in there with some X wraps. I think it looks really cool on the finished fly to have a couple of eyes sticking out. So I'll just kind of X wrap it in there a few times, and then I'll just give it a bend so that they're sticking up like so. Totally optional, but I dig it. That's how I do my version of this Avalon. Cool, so once those eyes are in there, we can add some flash. So I'll start with just some black Midge flash, Krystal Flash. It's kind of like the antenna, I guess. Just a little piece, then we'll trim it up like so. Kind of hang that off there. We'll trim her later. And next, I like just a little bit of Krystal Flash. I'm really liking this Bonefish Tan, but you could use pink, pearl, and even like a green. I don't know. It's totally up to you. Just cut off a couple strands, maybe 4 or 5 strands. Wrap it in, wrap it over, just like so, so it's sticking out like that. I'm not super particular with that. I mean, it's going to move around in the water anyways, so you know, however much or however little flash you want. Totally up to you. Next we're just going to do, I use just a piece of 30-pound mono. This is going to hold on some brass beads, which do a couple of things. One, The reason I dig this fly is that it sinks down really fast, but it doesn't make a big splash. It's not like throwing a big crab or even a big shrimp. This is what I do to save time. You can use a pair of pliers and just crimp it down so it's got something for the thread to connect to. I'll just advance my thread up to the eyes, tie that in with a couple tight wraps like so. This is on the underside of the fly, by the way, the opposite of the hook, so that we can ride upright. And we'll just wrap that back, to the bend of the hook, or to your eyes, or wherever. Get it back there. There's no right or wrong way to wrap this stuff on. All this thread's going to be covered up anyways. Just make sure it's in there. Mono has a tendency to slip sometimes. I've lost these on, you know, whatever. Triggerfish will do it to you, but they'll do it to anybody, any fly. Cool, so we got that hanging off. This is actually going to double as our weed guard as well. Once we're done, I'll show you that. And then next, we're just going to take some flat diamond braid. I use pearl. You could use whatever color you want the shell to be. I've seen some cool ones with even blue. You know, a lot of the crabs I see around have some blue on them, so that's an option. Any color that you'd really like. Just a little piece, not too much. I'll go back to about the middle of the hook. Fold that over. Fold that over. Like so, and wrap it in on the back. It's not going to go anywhere, but I'll just do just a couple nice wraps up, and then you can kind of separate it and pull it down like that, and your last few wraps will separate it like that. So this is going to kind of mimic the shell. After we do our body, we'll bend it up, tie it here, and it'll kind of mimic a shell, give it some flash. Next, I know a lot of guys use marabou for this. I really like ice dub, or even this Senyo's laser dub. I think it looks awesome. It's kind of like a little bit translucent, you know. I'll just take off a little bit of that at a time. And we're just going to do a dubbing rope. This is like the quickest and easiest way to tie this, and I think it looks awesome. So just twist some of that on there. Wrap your body. Make sure you cover up your mess underneath. And we'll just continue this all the way up the body of the fly. You can use less, more, it depends. I really like this fly tied kind of sparse. I just found it just looks better in the water. It's less commotion on your cast, which is the most unforgiving part of permit fishing, I think, is making that cast and they hear something that's not right and they spook off. Cool, so we'll go with that, just like that. I'll do a couple wraps up here just to kind of make a bed for up behind the eyes. That's where we're going to tie in our wings here, which are just going to be just some rabbit strips. This is my favorite color, hands down, just the grizzly. It just looks so good in the water. What I'll do to that, this is totally optional too, is on the underside it's just plain white on the leather. Kind of towards the tip, I'll just give it just a little stripe with an orange Sharpie, orange marker. Just give it some color there. I'm not sure if it helps or not, but most of these crabs and stuff that I see have a little bit of red, a little bit of orange. I'm going to stick with orange because it's the same as our legs. Kind of stick to a theme. So with this, I'll do this one first here on this side. Just capture it like that. Get it kind of where you want it. Then hit it with some tight wraps. Just to lock her in there. Like that. We'll do the same exact thing with our zonker strip on the other side. Maybe. Okay, just a couple tight wraps, nice and even. When you trim these, it just depends on what you want, but I'll this is a pretty good length for me. You know, they splay out enough. They're not getting caught with this hook. Like, that's never going to bend up there and mess up a hook set with the leather or whatever. So that's what I'll do for that. And then you've got this. This next part's totally optional as well. 100% up to the tire if they want to do this or not. I do it usually just one little piece, little bunch of dubbing just for this thread here. Just makes it look a little prettier, but like I said, it's optional. If you're using a different colored thread, it might be cool to have that hot spot. I know a lot of guys that tie it with that hot spot and they dig it. Cool, so you look like that. Next step will be to bend up our diamond braid here. So just bend that up, create our shell here. I'll just tie them in both at the same time. Keeping it nice and flat. This will also, if you do it the way I did it, will kind of push out your wings a little bit. You know. So we'll capture that. Actually, hang on. My braid's kind of coming apart here. It's becoming a mess, slowly but surely. Let's save it here. I'm just going to do them one at a time then. Start with this. Wrap it in there nice. We'll get our second one over. Cool. Then if you have any excess here, I'll just bend it back. Like so, and then we'll just trim off the extra. Like that. Clean up the head a little bit. So that's what you got now. I've got these kind of splaying out, but I dig it. They don't always come out like that, but I'm trying to do it quick, you know. I dig it though, it'll look sweet in the water. Cool, then we're going to invert our fly back to where we started, upside down. We're going to take our mono. 3 of these they're not glass, these are brass beads. You can use glass, you can use anything really. Tungsten beads, just bead heads. I use 3, I think it's a perfect weight for the size hook. I'm going to put it down through the eye, like so. It's a little long, so we're going to trim it now. Just through the eye like that. I'll get it kind of where I want it. Give it 4 or 5 of those wraps there, loose wraps. And then I'll kind of position it. So you don't want it too far, you don't want a super big loop there, but you want those beads to be able to move around a little bit. That's how your fly's going to dive when you cast it. If you've ever seen, you know, a live crab, they dive as soon as they hit the water, if you've ever fished with one. So that's kind of what I'm going for with these. As soon as it hits the water, I want it to dive straight down. Cool. Tighten that up there. You can take your excess here and just bend it back towards the hook point. 5 or so wraps, then invert. This is going to double as our weed guard. So what I'll do is I'll just make sure that it's in there. Make sure those beads aren't going anywhere. Once I know it's there, I'll just give it a bend. Mono has some memory, so you can just bend it back there. So it's pointing up. I'll give it just a quick trim like that. And then I'll give some wraps behind it. It's going to help it stand up. There we go. Now what I'll do is I'll just do a few wraps both ways, just around it. Like so. And now we'll go back the other way. It'll just give it another reason to stand up and not move on you. There we go. A few in front and a few more behind it. And then I'll just whip finish. It's way easier with the tool. If you do it by hand, cool. I'll whip finish behind that weed guard. Reason being is I think it just holds a little better. And that's essentially our fly. Get that weed guard trimmed. Nice and easy. A little short, but it's okay. Cool. Now we'll just do some trimming, some housekeeping here. You know, just pull those back, trim as long as you like. Pull your two Midge flash back there. That's essentially our fly. You can cure it with, or hit it with some loon if you want. I think this stuff smells, but I don't know. I'll see how many more refusals I get while I'm using it. See if I can pinpoint the refusals to be in permit or the loon. Cure that with the light. And there it is. That's the Avalon. This caught my most recent permit. It was probably almost 20 pounds or so. Same exact fly.